Mike, tackling climate change is one of 8 departmental strategic objectives at DEFRA. So what does that mean? Exactly how important is this for the government?
I mean, for the government, it's clearly in the top 5 or so priorities. There's no question that it sits very much at the heart of all government thinking. The Prime Minister himself is deeply committed. Deeply committed not just because we clearly believe the science and the direction that this is going and know we need to do something urgently about it, but also it provides a real opportunity for driving the low carbon economy. There's jobs in this, there's a new infrastructure in this. This is all about new investment in Britain, in Europe, in the world, for producing a new paradigm for how we actually run energy, how we run our economies.
And as you mentioned, this is a global problem requiring international cooperation, but what do you see as an appropriate contribution from the UK?
Well, the UK has quite a number of contributions. We are actually responsible directly for 2% of global emissions. We actually have to, and have the capacity as a country, to lead, to demonstrate across Europe and actually to 2 of the key countries that really we have to have within the pack if we're to be successful, the US and China. They have to see that we can deliver this by actually running our economies differently, by setting up our energy infrastructure differently, by moving finance so it flows through the system, actually chasing the technology that we need and producing the results that we need.
And in terms of chasing solutions, DEFRA says that any positive outcome is crucially dependent on action by others. So how are you engaging with the private sector?
The private sector actually have a key role in several areas, both in the behaviour change required, and people need to be thinking totally in different terms to be able to grip this agenda, but from an economic perspective as much from an environmental perspective. So our engagement, whether it's with the CBI, whether it's with bankers, whether it's with investors, whether it's with the energy companies, has to be entirely predicated on that, setting that long-term framework. This is the direction we're going to go. We need you guys to invest with us. We, the government, have to play our part. We have to set the right incentives. We have to set the right framework, the right targets, and then talk and cooperate and engage across the board on what's the best way to get there.
And given all those stakeholders, to what extent does success or failure depend on the cooperation of the energy companies in particular?
Well, I mean, the energy companies are arguably the biggest part of it. The emissions from energy account for some 40% in the UK alone of our total carbon emissions. That is a huge quantity, and really every business, every home depends on its energy. We know that, and that's why we work totally together with BER, with the Department of Energy, on how we get those 2 agendas going together, because energy security is as important as climate change. I make no pretense about that. I'm in charge of the climate change agenda, but I know that it's just as important for our lights to be on, for our energy to work, for our heating to work, for people. So energy companies' contribution is enormous and will be enormous to the agenda. So we have to engage.
What short and medium long-term goals are you working towards?
We are now putting in place our response to how you do it. What's the overall renewable energy strategy? How do we deal with domestic heating? How do we deal with the policy mix that will take us towards that level? That's the sort of short-term goal. The medium term then requires the investment to produce the infrastructure to blend with those policies so that we do have a new grid infrastructure so that the national grid can take what the new energy mix is. Then the long term is what I've said previously. It's about the low carbon economy. It's about it simply being embedded in part of normal business activity. So I don't need to exist as a group anymore. I don't need to be a Director General of Climate Change Group. It's just normal for a business, for the energy mix, to be thinking about what effect their business has on carbon emissions.
And if we consider the new sources of energy, how do you see the energy mix developing?
I mean, the energy mix is something that we can't predict in government, the exact energy mix in 20, 30 years' time. What we have made clear is the mix is going to have to be fundamentally different. There's likely to be new nuclear, there's likely to be coal-fired power plants, but we'll need carbon capture and storage to capture the carbon emissions from that. Renewables, there's a range of renewables that are pretty exciting, some of them more developed, less developed than others. We have offshore wind coming down the track, we have onshore wind coming track. We have an investigation into a big project in the Severn Barrage as to whether you can harness tidal power. We've got the fascinating possibilities with biogas and anaerobic digestion, and we've got all sorts of microgeneration possibilities from individuals' houses. So the mix is going to be very different.
And you referenced carbon capture and storage there. So what's the potential of this, and how are you incentivising the development?
Carbon capture and storage is one of the key technologies that we need globally. It's difficult to invest in it though, because we don't have the technology yet. So we have to find ways to get that incentive into the system. Nationally, we need to look at that very carefully, and it needs to be quite a clever combination between public investment, public confidence that we are going to want to invest in this technology, and private industry. So the question you ask really is not so much just about what the financial incentives are going to be, it's how quickly can we do it? Because every week China's building 2 coal-fired power plants. That's an awful lot of carbon going into the atmosphere. We need to stop that now, and carbon capture is the way to do it.